Welcome to the BEASTwriter podcast. I am your host, Ryan Sakamoto, and tonight we are going to be discussing and breaking down Todd McShay's mock draft 1.0. So let's get started. Now, for those who don't have ESPN Insider, don't worry, I have you covered. It's a subscription that you have to pay for, but like I said, I went ahead and I already paid for that, so I'm just going to be talking about that specific pick as it pertains to the Cardinals. Typically, in years past, Todd McShay would be drafting or making selections based on no trades. This year he included trades, which is a little different, but at pick number 16 it doesn't matter because obviously the Cardinals are staying pat. Alright, so before we go ahead and get started, I just want to say thank you for all who subscribe to my channel, all new subscribers, all loyal subscribers who have subscribed since day one. Be sure for both of you guys to turn on the bell notifications so you get notified when I go live or when I upload content. Also, I'm noticing again, every video that I'm watching and my analytics, it tells me that about 83% of you guys are still watching my channel but have yet to subscribe. So I went ahead and included a subscribe button in the lower right hand corner of your screen. So please go ahead and hit the subscribe button because there's a reason why you're watching all my videos. This way you can stay up to date on all things Beast in real time. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started without further ado. Dun, 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 and here we go. Alright, so at pick number 16, Todd McShay has the Arizona Cardinals selecting Gregory Rosseau out of the University of Miami. Now again, how he formulates his mock drafts is very similar to how I do mine. It's not based on what we would do if we were the team's GM, but how we actually see the draft playing out. In his analysis, he believes that Gregory Rosseau is going to be the pick as the draft board currently stands. And this is his analysis. He says, finally an edge rusher. The last time it took this long to see one drafted was 2004 when Will Smith went to the Saints at number 18. But you won't hear any complaints from the Cardinals, who can jump on an opportunity to slide in a difference maker opposite Chandler Jones, who is a free agent after next season. The Cardinals were tied for 4th in sacks this season with 48, but 12.5 of those came from Haason Reddick, who is hitting the open market this spring. Rousseau opted out in 2020, but trailed only Chase Young in sacks in the FBS the season prior with 15.5. Alright, so who is Gregory Rosseau? Again, if you are new to following my podcast, I break it up into 3 parameters: who or the players or coaches involved, why the move was made or potentially could be made, and the last but not least parameter is the instant gratification versus long-term gain. So in this case, it's Gregory Rosseau, right? University of Miami product. As Todd McShay just pointed out, he opted out of the 2020 season, and here we are today. Now we just have to go by the tape of 2019 in which he racked up 15.5 sacks. Now, Daniel Jeremiah from NFL Network released his big board, his top 50, and Gregory Rosseau comes in at number 13 on his big board. When you take into account my big board, he doesn't even crack the top 25. So people are going to be asking now, why is the discrepancy between Daniel Jeremiah, mine, and where Todd McShay has Gregory Rosseau being slotted to be picked at number 16? I'm going to talk about that in a little later in this podcast, but for the sake of the podcast, let's continue on, and I will tell you why Todd McShay specifically thinks that Gregory Rosseau will be mocked to the Cardinals at number 16. Right? From a needs-based standpoint, it makes total sense, right? Even though it's not based on best player available, because I believe there's other players who are better players when you just look at the vertical board. However, when comparing their horizontal board and what you can get at pick number 16, Todd McShay brings up great points when it comes to Chandler Jones playing in the last year of his contract. But let's go ahead and take it a step further. Let's take a look at the cap situation, right? The Cardinals cap situation. So currently they're sitting at $13.5 million under the cap, which is not bad. I would say that's about average, right? But they need cap health. And Chandler Jones is due to make he would save the team $15.5 million if the team was to release him. Now, why would they do that? Well, Todd McShay hit on it that he's playing in the last year of his contract, while also the team needs to make a decision on whether or not to re-sign Haason Reddick to a long-term deal, because he's also a free agent. So if you had to compare the two players and where the window is and where the current state of the franchise is right now, the Arizona Cardinals are not 1 or 2 players away from making a Super Bowl run. You can trade or release Chandler Jones, save $15.5 million, use that financial gain, and then invest that into a fountain of youth in in Haason Reddick's second contract. It makes totally financial sense. It doesn't make sense not to do it. Now the question remains to be seen whether Chandler Jones is going to get released or traded, but that's a play that I can possibly see playing out, which is why Gregory Rosseau is mocked in Todd McShay's mock draft at number 16. Okay, but with that being said, let's peel back another layer of the onion to get to the core. He failed to mention that cornerback Robert Alford, who would save the team $7.5 million, has done absolutely nothing since signing as a free agent from the Atlanta Falcons. He had a pec injury and a broken leg, if I'm not mistaken, and he's done little to nothing since coming over from the Falcons. And he's in the last year of his contract. And then you take it a step further, peeling back another layer onion to really get to the core, and then you talk about the starting cornerbacks. You talk about Patrick Peterson and Kirkpatrick. Both those guys are unrestricted free agents, so there's no guarantee that one or both or any of those players are coming back. So that's your top 3 cornerbacks on the depth chart off the board when you take into account obviously Byron Murphy, right? So that's your only holdover, and he's going to be moved up the board because absolutely he's going to be starting at one cornerback position, but then you have another cornerback position, and then what's the depth behind you, right? So that's something that McShay failed to mention that I think that's very important and a piece to the puzzle at pick number 16. Now, let's take it a step further. How much would you be saving? Well, I just mentioned 15.5 from Chandler Jones, and then you dump Robert Alford's contract of $7.5 million. Now you're looking at around $23 million in cap savings. When you take that into account, you can then roll that money over plus the $13.5 million of cap health that they're already in, and you can use that money to go after another free agent that would fill a need before heading into the draft at number 16. All right, so there's a number of different ways that the Arizona Cardinals and GM Steve Keim can go in, but this is something to think about down the line. All right, so at pick number 16, I mentioned the cornerback position, and while Todd McShay has the team drafting Gregory Rosseau, I don't see them taking an edge. I think they're going to invest that money into Haason Reddick, and while I just pointed out that cornerback is a bigger need because you're losing your 2 starting boundary cornerbacks, Jaycee Horn out of South Carolina would be a perfect and ideal fit. He's a player I already discussed in an earlier podcast when analyzing Todd McShay's pick of the San Francisco 49ers. So you can go ahead and watch that podcast in the description above right here. You'll see it just streamed up. You can go ahead and click on that and you can see what I have to say about him. You see how my earlier podcasts tie into this one, and that's why it's pretty cool, because I paint a picture not just to one specific topic, but how this topic relates to the next topic, and then you can kind of connect the dots. If you notice, all my podcasts are formulated that way because you have to have the forward thinking and the knowledge to go ahead and do that. That's why I do it this way. And people who try to question me without watching the podcast, you're doing yourself a disservice. You're only going to look dumb, because without doing the research and without watching my podcast, how can you judge something when you haven't even seen it yet, or not even caught up on everything, connecting the dots? Anyways, let's go ahead and talk about the Arizona Cardinals, and again, that's why I see that Steve Keim might pull the trigger on a cornerback like Jaycee Horn out of South Carolina. He's a guy who's ascending up the draft boards. He's going to put up great measurable numbers. Now, one thing that I really like about him is his swagger and his ability to high point the football and win his 50-50 balls when he is covered and matched up one-on-one. He is also not scheme dependent. He can be a very good press corner, and he is also good in zone coverage. So look for Jaycee Horn to possibly be in play at pick number 16 because of the things that I just mentioned earlier. Now, if not Jaycee Horn, if the team decides opt not to go cornerback because they have yet to do that under Steve Keim's regime, look for them to go ahead and tackle on that running back position. Let's take a look back at Najee Harris or Travis Etienne. Both of those players will likely be on the board at pick number 16, barring no trades or anything like that, right? So with that being said, it blows my mind that Najee Harris, my draft crush out of Alabama, is not ranked higher on most teams' boards. It's baffling to me, because to me, Najee Harris is ranked in the top 10 on my big board. In fact, as of right now, I have him ranked number 7. and he's only going to ascend. That can even go in the top 5, even in possibly the top 3. That's how highly I think of Najee Harris, and people are doubting him because of the system that he's in at Alabama. But then again, everybody in the SEC is a powerhouse. Every team, every good team that makes it to the championship game obviously has to have a strong offensive line and defensive line, because games are won where? Down in the trenches. You have to dominate the line on both sides of the football. So it's kind of common sense to not knock Najee Harris because of the talent and the first round talent or the NFL talent that he has in front of him. It just doesn't make sense, and it's not fair. It's very unfair. And for me I just wanted to point that out for me. And anybody who says otherwise, again, come at me. I don't care. I will spit back with facts, and you guys know I always keep it 100. If you agree to disagree, please leave and drop your comments in the sections below. All right, so let's go ahead and roll over. If not Najee Harris, get it? Roll over, roll tide. If not Najee Harris, I can see Travis Etienne from Clemson being a perfect fit, because, again, he's a better fit as an inside-outside zone type of guy in Cliff Kingsbury's offense. However, Sean Kugler also runs power plays, and coming from the Pittsburgh Steelers tree, that's where inside zone runs are more imperative, but then that's when you need to power back, right? So I can see either one of those backs possibly being a change of pace, but also being the workhorse and getting the bulk of those carries. Now, when you take it a step further, you'll have Kyler Murray, and then you have DeAndre Hopkins, D-Hop at wide receiver, and then you have your choice of running back in the upcoming draft. So that's a three-headed monster for the foreseeable future that you can build around. Now you're set at the skill positions, at the most important positions, and all you really have to do is to clean up the offensive line. Again, offensive line is the most important, and the team can also go offensive line. However, that's hard pressed for me to say, because left tackle DJ Humphries has already been given left tackle money. So at that point, why would you select a offensive tackle when you can easily find one in free agency with the cap savings that I just mentioned? Well, that'll be it for today. I hope you liked what I had to offer. If you did, please hit the subscribe button in the lower right hand corner of your screen. And please leave your comments as I keep all things Beast. Thank you for tuning in. Have a good night. BEASTwriter out.